Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, May 11th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 116 days, the game against Michigan in exactly 200 days. Just an hour or two after we finished recording yesterday's show, of course, Dylan Raiola, the top overall player in the class of 2024, did indeed end up committing to Ohio State, as we discussed as a possibility on the show. If you have not checked out the instant reaction show that Tony Gerderman and I released after that commitment, you can find that in the Buckeye Weekly feed on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this show on. Now, on to the topic of today's show, and we are now entering the countdown to the 2022 season. This is a year when it's looking like Ohio State should have a pretty darn good football team. The Buckeyes are prohibitive favorites in the Big Ten, and considered by a lot of people to be one of the only teams with a shot to knock off what should be a pretty darn good Alabama team. Longtime friend of the show, Bill Bender of the Sporting News, just released his post-transfer portal top 25, so we're going to chat about where the Buckeyes stack up and who else is in the running to be in the college football playoff this year. Bill, thanks for being here.
Hey, Tom, thanks for having me on. How are you?
Good. I was looking. I was like, has it really been like 5 months since Bill was on the show? That's not possible. We got to do this. We got to do this more often. And you gave me a great excuse. I saw it on your Twitter feed this week. The post transfer portal top 25. I was like, okay, I have been doing this long enough that I'm familiar with the various genres of offseason top 25. One of the great tools of every sports writer, the offseason content machine. You get the way too early top 25 right after the end of the previous season. A lot of people do like a post-spring top 25 after teams wrap up spring ball in April. But a post-transfer portal top 25, that's a new one on me. What made you decide to wait until after that immediate eligibility deadline on May 1st to release a new top 25?
Well, I mean, this is part of the ever-changing calendar. You almost have to because you have to see who's coming, who's going. I mean, right down to the wire, Jordan Addison is still in the transfer portal, or those kind of things. We did a story for tomorrow, and I won't spoil it, but of the 65 Power 5 schools, 21 are going to have a transfer quarterback of some sort, either competing or starting in 2022. That's how much this has changed, and obviously that's the most visible position, but you really got to wait until then, until the rosters are kind of finalized to see what you're dealing with going into 2022.
Well, at the top of this year's rankings, you have Alabama, and that is a team that has benefited from the portal quite a bit. Ohio State fans are obviously familiar with Jamison Williams and a little more indirectly familiar with Henry To'oTo'o last year, but they have added a couple really big names in the portal again this year. How much of a difference did that make for their ceiling, the guys that they've brought in since the end of last season? And then where does this Alabama team potentially rank among the pantheon of great Nick Saban Alabama teams? Is this a, good Nick Saban team, which equals, college national championship contender, or is this a great Nick Saban team, which equals national championship favorite?
Yeah, I mean, they'll be at least good by that standard. I think they'll be a playoff favorite, a prohibitive SEC favorite. What they did was add 3 starters via the transfer portal. Eli Ricks, a corner. Jahmyr Gibbs, a Georgia Tech guy that he could have like a Reggie Bush impact on that offense. He saw what he could do in the spring game. He's an all-around running back. And they get Jermaine Burton from Georgia. So, I mean, they're loaded. The transfer portal for them is basically like the Dodgers with free agency. They can pluck 1, 2, 3 guys, plug them right into an already loaded lineup and go from there. And anytime your 2 best players are the Heisman Trophy winner Bryce Young and the guy that'll probably go number 1 maybe in next year's draft, and Will Anderson, you're off to a pretty good start.
Yeah, and we'll get to some of the teams that Alabama is going to be playing during the course of the season because they have a fairly difficult schedule. But you have Ohio State ranked second, right behind Alabama. Last year qualifies as a down year in Columbus. Only winning the Rose Bowl. That is definitely a major step back for Ohio State, or by the normal standards. But it sure seems like the Buckeyes might have the best chance of anyone in the country to match up, around the field at all 22 spots with the Crimson Tide.
Well, the offensive machine is going to be real. I mean, again, here's a team that has the Heisman favorite, C.J. Stroud, the best receiver in the country, Jackson Smith-Jigba, along with other breakout candidates at that position in Marvin Harrison and Mecca Buka, Julian Fleming, take your pick. It's the deepest receiving core in the country, thanks to Brian Hartline. Fabian Henderson almost is an afterthought in the offense, and he's one of the best home run hitting running backs, and their offensive line should be nasty. So, the question is the defense with Jim Knowles. What changes? This was a defense that, make no bones about it, got gashed against Oregon and Michigan on the ground. Do they change on that side of the ball? Does Jack Sawyer become a immediate breakout player? are those safeties. I've read a lot of good things, saw a lot of good things out of the safeties in the spring. So all the pieces are there for Ohio State and Alabama. I mean, I think across most publications, you'll see those 2, 1, and 2.
I like the Pickerington representation there, giving Jack Sawyer a shout out. Always appreciate you standing up for Picktown.
I didn't even get to Sonny Styles. I could have said is Sonny Styles going to play. Yeah, I mean, who's next, Tom? But yeah, I had to slip that in there. Sorry.
Yeah, Ty Hamilton on the interior of the defensive line. Picktown is representing on this year's Ohio State defense for sure. The rest of your top 5 is Georgia, Clemson, and Texas A&M, and those are 3 teams that they're really in different spots right now. Georgia just hit the top of the mountain for the first time since 1980, but then they lost a ton of talent in the NFL draft. Clemson now trying to bounce back after what qualified as a disastrous season for them, which was I think still 10 wins, which is that's the kind of disaster a lot of people would gladly sign up for. But they've had a ton of turnover on their staff. And then Texas A&M is trying to finally kind of get over the hump, get into the playoff for the first time. They beat Alabama last year, but lost a couple other games. So to you, which of those teams is maybe the surest bet to earn a spot in the playoff?
Probably Clemson, as crazy as that sounds, because they have the ACC schedule. They're going to have 3 first-round picks on their defense, Brian Bresee, Miles Murphy, and Trenton Simpson. And it's easy, like you said, 10 wins for them is a down year, and they played Georgia in the opener. So it's not like they played Georgia tough in the opener. They couldn't get the offense going. And I guess that's the big question. Does DJ Uiagalelei take the next step, or does Cade Klubnik make it a true quarterback battle? What's the running game look like? And, I think they'll be the favorites to win the ACC again, and maybe take that back, get back to the playoff. And with that defense they have, sometimes they lost both coordinators, and sometimes Ohio State's found this out, and Alabama's found this out before. Sometimes when the coordinators leave, a new fresh set of eyes on the offense and defense isn't the worst thing, and maybe they'll get that in Clemson.
Well, another team that lost both of its coordinators but is still very close to the top of your list is Michigan. You've got them number 6, and that feels like a spot where maybe Ohio State fans just sort of looking at lost Aiden Hutchinson, lost David Ajabo, lost Dax Hill, and don't necessarily have those kinds of guys waiting in the wings to replace him. I think maybe Ohio State fans are kind of thinking that seems kind of high. So what do you see in that Michigan team that makes you think that they're still in that, number 6 kind of top 5-ish neighborhood?
Soft schedule to start. I mean, if you look at their schedule, it's set up. There's not a huge non-league game. They could settle in on the defensive side. Yeah, I mean, losing those studs in the big games, it will matter, but it's not going to matter against Colorado State and all the way up to, when they play Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State, the big games on the schedule. The other thing, I think their offense will be pretty good. They're going to have a quarterback controversy all the way through because I think everybody knows that McNamara might be that solid Harbaugh-like guy, but J.J. McCarthy, they're only going to be able to bench him for so long. You can see the talent there. Donovan Edwards, Ronnie Bell's back, Andrew Anthony. They've got pieces on that offense. Now, at the end of the road, they haven't won in Columbus since 2000. And, I mean, that's that stat I pull out every 2 years because, I mean, they haven't won there since Drew Henson was at quarterback. So it's been a long time, and until that happens, it's hard not to consider Ohio State the favorite in 2022.
Yeah, that was so long ago. I was literally still a college student. That is how long ago that was. If I didn't have headphones on, you could see the gray hair. So yes, it has been a hot minute since Michigan has won in Columbus. Right below Michigan, number 7, you've got another team that's on Ohio State's schedule for Columbus this year, and that is Notre Dame. This is a transition year for them as well. Instead of the coordinators like Michigan and Clemson, they went all the way to the top. The head coach, Brian Kelly, down now in Baton Rouge. And Marcus Freeman, it's going to be his first game as the head coach of Notre Dame, coming back to the place where he played his college football. I mean, I guess first give us a scouting report on Notre Dame in general. But I mean, number 2, like, man, of all the opening weekend games, that is one where it's like, boy, there is no shortage of narratives around that Ohio State Notre Dame matchup.
Well, I mean, the summer's going to be fun. You take it back to when we were in high school, I think, both of us, 94, 95, when that Ohio State Notre Dame had the home and home. And I just remember all of the excitement around those games. And that's what we're going to get this summer. And it's a huge opening spot for both teams. I think Notre Dame, even if they lose that game, which they'll be picked to lose by about 6, 7, that their schedule's still set up that they could still make a run. They play USC, they play BYU, they play Clemson again. So I think Freeman's got a nice core with the linebackers they have. They get a Brandon Joseph, a Northwestern safety on that side of the ball. Buchner will play quarterback, and they do have. There's another Pickerington drop coming. Lorenzo Styles is going to be a breakout receiver for them this year, along with Michael Meyer, the best tight end in the country. So that's not a walkover game for the Buckeyes by any stretch. If they play poorly against Notre Dame, they could get beat.
And below Notre Dame, I'm going to just run through kind of like 8 through 14 here. Several teams that Ohio State has played recently: Utah, number 8, Oregon, number 9, Baylor, 10, Oklahoma, 11, Oklahoma State, 12, Michigan State, 13, USC, 14. Is there one or two of them, or even, someone further down the list, who you think could be in that playoff conversation come late November, early December, someone who might be a little bit of a dark horse this year?
Well, they're not a dark horse. They are the Trojan horse. It's USC that everybody's going to be talking about during the year because they did. I can't believe I worked that pun in. I'm shocked at myself here.
I put that on a tee for you and didn't even mean to do it.
Seamlessly, it threw me off. Caleb Williams has some serious star quality, so they get him. If they get Jordan Addison, they already got Travis Dye. Here's kind of the MO on USC. They are going to be a very exciting offense with Lincoln Riley, but I don't know if they have it up front on both sides. They have enough to get to the playoff. But do they have enough on both sides up front to kind of what we did with Oklahoma every year? Do they have it in the trenches to beat Ohio State, to beat Clemson, Alabama, whoever comes out of the SEC? And that's going to be the big question there. But there's no question that USC is definitely one of the most polarizing, interesting teams that's good for the Pac-12. That's saying it's good for college football when USC is good. I would say it's good for college football when USC is entertaining.
Yeah, it's probably not bad for college football if college football is relevant in the college football playoff time of year, coast to coast, and not just a lot of the Southeast and maybe Columbus, Ohio, or Norman, Oklahoma. That's probably not a bad thing. I will have a link to that full top 25 in the post for this show on the front page of Buckeye Scoop. But Bill, let people know where they can follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm at BillBender92 and sportingnews.com. And this is kind of the sign. What did we call this? The post-transfer portal top 25. We'll have other things coming. This is kind of that talking season. May has really crept on us. I know you and I are always on some sort of athletic youth sports field this time of year, but the summer creeps up on you quick. And like I said, the Notre Dame Ohio State thing's really cool for me because it's going to mean when I'm out at all these fields, that's an easy conversation to start because it's going to be a lot of fun when those two hook up in September.
Yes, if you are around Pickerington, around youth sports, you will probably see Bill out there. And if you do, feel free to ask him about that Ohio State Notre Dame game. But Bill, really appreciate you taking the time to join us and talk a little football. Those games are getting close. As I said, Michigan game only 200 days away, and that Notre Dame game even closer than that. So that'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.